We have our dynamic content engine at Publicis, and that's across the portfolio of agencies. And what that enables us to do, powered by something called Optimum, we're able to look at machine learning against dynamic content. So it's taking dynamic content to that next level. And I deliberately say content and not creative, because we have to think about how the consumer experiences what we put out there across all of the space, whether that's paid, owned, or earned. And so when we think about content, we can optimize native content, we can optimize owned content, we can optimize our advertising content, and think about where that fits in that consumer journey in terms of where the consumers are the most receptive, understanding what they have seen before in terms of sequence, what their brand preference is, and understanding where they are on that consumer journey in terms of are they ready to convert. And so we then are able to then put out the right message accordingly. What the software and the smart guys in our organization do behind the scenes is they've created this software to enable us to machine learn behind that. We can apply our human understanding on that, but the reality is that we can't move as fast as a machine can go. So in an instance in Europe, we had over 500 permutations of creative running within a week within one campaign across multiple markets. And that's limitless, right? It starts to get to the point that you can get completely one-to-one in terms of how creative you can get in terms of the bespoke messaging.
And how about understanding the value and performance in that scenario?
We were using MTA to track that back, so multi-touch attribution, within that digital ecosystem to understand what then was happening against those individuals and driving that back into the system to help with the machine learning. So that real-time learning is coming back in, and then it's driving the decisioning across that machine learning platform.
And how do you judge success there?
Oftentimes it's based on conversion of sales in terms of sales within a website, or in this instance we were looking at people changing the way that they use currency. So you're able to take your KPIs based on what you work on with your clients' businesses, what's going to impact their business the most, and use that KPI to be the key driver that enables you to machine learn against that. So you have to be very precise with what your success looks like from the outset to ensure that you are using the right data points to connect the dots back to how you optimize.
So Lisa, what about actually targeting sort of this optimized data to individuals in terms of their identity, how you craft that identity? There's obviously different issues of privacy in the US versus Europe, but how does sort of identity, or how does the identity graph, if you will, fit into this, or the notion of proper targeting and using data?
I would break that down into several key areas. First of all, there's compliance, right? And the first thing is with compliance at Publicis, we are very, very strict in terms of how we operate across the globe. GDPR compliance is our baseline. There are some markets that have even stricter legislation than GDPR. So we apply to whatever is most relevant in that local market, with a baseline of GDPR being, the lowest level compliance. It has changed things a little bit, but I think it's also put the guardrails on the industry to make sure that we are doing the right thing by our consumers as well. Now, when we think about how we use that data at Publicis, we are extremely compliant in that we never handle PII. We're not in a situation where I know that it's you, Andy, or whether it's Catherine or Lisa or whoever it might be, right? We don't know the names or the address. We're never handling that PII. What we're doing is we're taking what we know in terms of the client first-party data, we're bringing that into a data clearinghouse. We're then bringing in our own Publicis IDs that we've built over time through a number of different data sources. We have our own PACE panel that enables us to get to attitudinal and ID level across over 44 different markets, 7 million mobile devices, and so on. Bring that in, pop that into the data clearinghouse too. And then we start to then meld that data together and start to match that data together so that we can actually bring out the bottom an appended data set that enables us to learn around what is this set of people doing from this particular client versus what we know about, and enhance that with third-party sources as well to get to understanding how to best target people in terms of how they behave. Now, that first-party behavioral data enables us to understand what are existing customers behaving, how do they behave? And that enables us to find those lookalikes across other areas in terms of how are we going to most likely convert other spaces, other people that aren't actually existing customers. So defining the identity graph for us is around a number of spaces. Obviously, we have our own ID graph that we built over time in terms of the device IDs that we had. Now what we have is we then enhance that with a multitude of third-party partnerships, where we have enhanced partnerships. So the number of partnerships we have is immense. But to name a couple, thinking about, at API level, we have Comscore data coming, we have IOTA data, we have GWI and Experian, all of that coming into enhance, enrich, and then also qualify IDs and validate them as well.
Great, and finally, we talked a little bit earlier about machine learning. I wanted to ask you sort of the relevance of machine learning and AI. It's been much talked about, particularly in the last couple of Cannes festivals. We've spoken about it. What's the reality of machine learning, or AI as you may call it, this year, and what do you hope the conversation will be?
I'm kind of laughing inside because I remember us talking about the year of the mobile for about 20 years. And I feel like AI might be a little bit like that in terms of we keep talking about it, but the reality is it's happening. It's happening, and it's happening fast. We've already rolled out machine learning on a number of campaigns across the Publicis network to great success. I think AI is really exciting when we can apply the understanding at a much faster pace than the human brain can work. But we also need to make sure, and I shouldn't say but because it's not really a but, it's an and adding that emotional bond, that emotional connection to it in terms of how we understand human beings react, because it's not an exact science. We have a plethora of data. It enables us to truly understand where people are and what they are doing, but we need to overlay that emotional connection with it. And that's what things like the PACE panel enable us to do, because it enables us to get to those softer edges of understanding how people feel about brands and what they're doing and how they're behaving. It enables us to get that extra insight over and above.